When a woman becomes pregnant and after the birth of her child, there are many things she can do to help get breastfeeding off to a great start. What resources should she turn to, and what preparation can she do ahead of time? Today I'm excited to introduce Denise Altman, an RN, an International Board Certified Lactation Consultant, and Lamaze Certified Childbirth Educator to our show. Today we are discussing how to not need a lactation consultant. This is the Boob Group, episode 32.
Breast milk, it does a baby good.
Silly daddy, boobs are for babies.
I make milk. What's your superpower?
If my breastfeeding offends you, put a blanket over your head.
Dairy diva.
Don't be lactose intolerant.
Nursing nature's own breast enhancement.
Meals on heels.
Whoever said there's no use crying over spilled milk never had to pump.
Breast milk. All others are inferior.
Whatever your point of view, we're here to support your breastfeeding goals. We're the Boob Group, because mothers know breast. Welcome to the Boob Group, broadcasting from the Birth Education Center of San Diego. I'm your host, Robin Kaplan. I'm also an International Board Certified Lactation Consultant and owner of the San Diego Breastfeeding Center. At the Boob Group, we're your online support group for all things related to breastfeeding. Have you joined our brand new Boob Group Club? All Boob Group Club members can get access to our archived episodes, plus bonus interviews, transcripts, and special discounts and giveaways from our partners. Plus, you can interact with all this great content through the web or through our free Boob Group app, which is available at Amazon Marketplace as well as the iTunes Store for Apple. Today, I'm joined by three lovely panelists in the studio. Ladies, will you please introduce yourselves?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sunny Galt. I am 34 years old, and I am the host and producer of the Boob Group sister show, Preggy Pals, which is all about pregnancy. I have two little boys at home. One is just over 2, and the one I'm breastfeeding is just about 6 months old.
Hi, I'm Jade. I am 29 years old. I'm a stay-at-home mom to a 7-month-old son. He is at home with dad for the first time.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for coming in.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica. I am 25. I am a yoga teacher, and I'm working towards becoming a hypnobirthing instructor. I have one daughter who is almost 11 months old named Angelica. And I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, and welcome to the show.
Thanks.
So here's a question from one of our listeners. Megan wrote, "Is there an episode I can listen to about starting your period while nursing? I'm really paranoid about losing my supply and looking for tips to prepare myself." Well, Megan, we actually don't have an episode, but here is our expert, Rose Davinia-Jackowitz, who is going to answer your question for you.
Hi, Megan. This is Rose Davinia-Jackowitz, board-certified lactation consultant at the outpatient clinic in San Diego at Kaiser Permanente. You had some concerns about starting your period again and losing your milk supply. Typically, if you're nursing and not having any problem, when your period does return, the only thing you really need to worry about is getting pregnant again, because it means that you are most likely fertile now. However, your milk doesn't go bad when you start your period. There have been some moms that have felt that the baby noticed a slight change in flavor, and it's probably a hormonal shift. But after a day or two, that resolves. So during your period, you may have a baby that doesn't nurse as much or as often. Some moms have noticed because of the hormonal shift that they feel like there's a little bit of a decrease for a day or two, but once your period is started and your hormones shift back, there shouldn't be a problem. But many, many, many women nurse for a long period of time, even though they've started having their period, so it should not cause your milk to dry up if you continue to nurse. So hopefully that's helpful. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Today on the Boob Group, we're discussing how to not need a lactation consultant. Our expert, Denise Altman, is a private practice lactation consultant and nurse educator, as well as the owner of All the Best in Columbia, South Carolina. She is also a freelance writer with numerous articles for parents and healthcare professionals in print, as well as 2 medical textbooks called History and Assessment, It's All in the Details, and Mentoring Our Future. Thanks so much for joining us, Denise, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Robin.
So, Denise, for a mom not to need a lactation consultant, do you think that she needs a lot of preparation for breastfeeding while she's pregnant?
That's a yes and a no answer. No, because we are biologically made to breastfeed, and our babies are biologically made to breastfeed. So physically, does she need to do a lot of prep work? Nope. But mentally, yes. She needs to prepare her brain. Particularly the first-time mom, this is a whole new aspect of her life that is going to include such change. So there's no way for anyone to communicate how much that's going to be to her or her partner. It needs to start with the basics. Of course, healthy pregnancy, taking care of herself, getting good prenatal care. All of these things impact the breastfeeding experience. On top of that, if she is a working woman or in school, she needs to start clearing the decks about midway through pregnancy, preparing for her maternity leave, preparing for the birth. What I see in my practice is a lot of mamas get busier towards the end of pregnancy rather than lightening their workload. And this can have some real carryover into the initial postpartum period if they're not prepping ahead. And then finally, prepping the brain by getting some good education in prenatal classes, doing lots of reading, identifying resources, that sort of thing.
So talking about those type of resources, how important do you think it is for a pregnant mom to take a breastfeeding class, and are all these classes the same?
Well, I happen to believe as a prenatal educator, and that's where my background is that prenatal classes, especially breastfeeding classes, is very important. Are they all the same? No, absolutely not. Just like none of us are all the same. The mama needs to do her research and identify what is in her area. And there's traditional classes put on by hospitals, private practice LCs offer classes, doulas, birth centers. There could be individual classes in the home, traditional classes in the classroom, even online courses. So she really needs to research and find out what's in her area, what appeals to her. A lot of the younger mothers like online learning, which can be a great resource, but can also be limited because many of them are recorded and she can't have her own individual questions answered right on the spot. So she needs to consider what appeals to her, what's available to her. Very often there is a cost associated with it. And then she also needs to look at the content of the class itself. If it's all about the benefits of breastfeeding, that's nice, but usually you can get that just about anywhere. She needs the nuts and bolts, the how-tos, the what to do if the breastfeeding experience is going south. And she also needs to know who's teaching it. What are the credentials of the individual who is offering the class, teaching it, and how does she know what they're saying is accurate and up to date? So it does take some investigation to find the right class for her, but yes, short answer again, a prenatal breastfeeding class is very important.
That's great advice. And do you have any recommendations or personal favorites of books and websites that you would offer to a pregnant mom to have, maybe to keep in her breastfeeding library?
Okay. Being a book addict, I've really had to pare down my recommendation list, and especially for the pregnant mom. There's lots of good books out there. Does she need them all? Absolutely not. Especially, most women don't need the problem-oriented books. So I like to recommend the books and websites that are all about the basics. And of course, the mother organization of us all, La Leche League, and the Womanly Art of Breastfeeding book, the La Leche League website and the Womanly Art book, both are excellent basic resources for mothers that also include a lot of troubleshooting information and even some of the unexpected resources that she may look for, such as nursing after surgery and that kind of thing. KellyMom.com, another excellent website. Not a week goes by where I'm not recommending the site to several moms. So that's probably the one I'm on the most, as well as the website that I'm talking about the most. Breastfeeding Made Simple is a great book by Kathleen Kendall Tackett and Nancy Moorbacher. I like it because it's a little bit thinner and more manageable with some very basic step-by-step instructions, and it's extremely well laid out, so probably one of my favorites. the boob group materials, of course.
Thank you.
Especially for mamas who like to listen. I'm an audio person myself, so also a great resource. And then finally, very important, the Best for Babes website that talks about all of the booby traps. I think the frank and honest communication that's offered to mamas on their website is a very important resource during pregnancy when moms actually have the time to read and maybe process a little bit what's being said.
Oh, those are such great recommendations. Thank you, Denise. So I'm going to open this up to our panelists as well. Ladies, what type of breastfeeding preparation did you do before you had your baby? And do you think this preparation was helpful? Sunny, do you mind starting off?
No, not at all. I kind of slack in this department, I have to tell you. I don't know, we can all say, oh, we're so busy. And I should know better because this last one was my second. And things did not go exactly the way I wanted them to with my first. So you think I would have done more prep work. I have to say, and this really isn't a plug, I promise, but helping to produce the episodes of the Boob Group and sitting in on these tapings, we started recording these when I was still pregnant, and it forced me to listen and to really be more of an active participant in the whole thing. And, I think it really did get me off to a good start. And then even Robin, just being able to talk to you after the shows, like, okay, well, this was brought up in this conversation and this is something I struggled with and this was what my experience was. I kind of felt like I had a little bit of one-on-one, which kind of for most people probably would have been like having a consultation with a lactation consultant. That's kind of what it was, but it wasn't formalized, But as far as reading books and stuff like that, talking to other moms on Facebook and just even being a fly on the wall, there's some great Facebook groups out there of moms that are sharing their experiences and their struggles and their success stories. And all that, it needs to come very naturally to me. If it's not natural, it's just not going to work.
Thank you. How about you, Jade?
I feel like I'm in the minority. I took a birthing class, and one of the evenings focused on breastfeeding. And in all honesty, I didn't take it seriously just because we're nursing dolls, and it didn't feel real for me either, and I just figured, it'll come natural to me and, I'll know what to do when I have my baby. And I was lucky enough that, my baby was able to latch even though he was in the NICU for a few days. And, it just worked out. I mean, as far as pumping goes, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, we were really lucky.
That's great. Yeah. That's great. How about you, Jessica?
Well, I am all about, just trusting my body, and I just assumed it was not going to be a problem at all. I wasn't going to read a book or take a class or do anything. I was just kind of hoping for the best and just trusting the process. And then my due date comes around and I'm still pregnant, and I decide, okay, what else can I do to show this baby that I'm ready? So I signed up for a breastfeeding class on my due date, and it was with a whole bunch of other hypnobirthing moms. And it was just so great because you were just in this already set in a support group with all these other women in the same situation. You could just sit back and just have an expert, tell you what you needed to know. And there's so many things you don't even know to ask, that I would have no idea. Like, when do you switch from, side to side, or just little things that if you've never breastfed, you would have no idea is even a question. So I felt extremely prepared. I had a list of people to call if I had questions. So I just felt, so much support and had so many resources just given to me. I think it was like $30. And it was so worth it. I still have my little, there was a PowerPoint presentation. I still have my printouts in my Angelica folder at home. So it was awesome. I would definitely recommend it.
That's fantastic. Denise, how can a woman's OBGYN or midwife have a significant impact on how she's able to get breastfeeding off to a great start?
Well, this is a trust relationship. Again, the woman is in a very impactful time of her life during pregnancy, be it first or fifth. And you almost, when you have a physician or a midwife, a primary caregiver, you have it's a very personal relationship. And so you have a tendency in that trust relationship to develop a rapport, hopefully. And you put a lot of validity in what they say, how they say it, that kind of thing. So when the OBGYN midwife is at least knowledgeable about breastfeeding or encouraging and promoting of breastfeeding, then that really certainly does have an impact on decision making. In addition to that, if that practice is very positive breastfeeding, then there's going to be training across the board. When the mother has a problem, often she calls her OB/GYN or her midwife first, even over the pediatrician. And so the person answering that call is usually not the primary caregiver. It's the nurse or the medical assistant or whoever's handling triage that day. And so it all kind of flows downhill. If the caregiver's knowledgeable and encouraging, then their staff is more likely to be as well. And if they don't know the answer, hopefully we'll be up on their local resources and can get that mother referred to help if she needs it. Adversely, if at the doctor's office they're handing a mom at the very first appointment a packet of papers on pregnancy care and well care, plus a little gift bag with formula in it, that also sends a very strong message to the mama that, this is what their primary caregiver is recommending. And that can certainly have a long-term impact as well.
Thank you so much. Panelists, how were your OBs and midwives? Were they supportive of breastfeeding? Did they talk to you about it during your prenatal visits? Did you get a sense that they felt it was important? Jessica, how about you?
Well, I started off with an OBGYN, and I did get that gift bag with the formula. They also had a really high rate of C-sections, and it just wasn't a really good fit, so I switched over to a midwife. And I don't remember really talking about breastfeeding as much because it was just so given to me that I knew that I was going to do it. There really wasn't it wasn't really an issue of conversation because it was just a given. Actually, when I had the baby and was in the hospital, it was actually the nurses on the floor that were helping the midwife that, showed me how to bring the baby to me and different positions and stuff. And that was really helpful. They offered tips and were just kind of encouraging me. But yeah, the midwife herself wasn't really involved in that aspect as much.
Okay. How about you, Jade?
During my prenatal care, the midwives were very pro breastfeeding. And I mean, there was never a question of whether or not I would breastfeed. But I ended up having to give birth in a hospital, and my baby was taken to NICU immediately. So there wasn't a chance for me to have the skin-to-skin contact or breastfeed my son right away. So I was given a pump and just told to use it. I wasn't shown how to use it or how often to use it. So there's a lot of confusion that happened there. But when I did visit my son in NICU, and he was out of his bubble, and I was able to touch him and hold him and feed him, the nurses there were very helpful in helping me breastfeed him. And I was there every chance I got to feed him because I didn't want, him to have any formula or any more formula, or to be given a bottle. I just wanted him to breastfeed, and I wanted to get off on the best foot possible.
Absolutely. And Denise will definitely be talking about what your recommendations are for after the baby's born when we come back in a few minutes. But Sunny, can you share what your experience was with your OBs? Or I don't know if you had a midwife. Did you have an OB?
I had an OB,
yeah.
And it consisted of, do you plan to breastfeed? Yes. Okay. Check that off my list. That was pretty much it. And I don't know if it was because this is my second time around, and I think they knew that I had breastfed my first, but they didn't ask me questions like, hey, did everything go okay? Is there anything you want to change? There were no follow-up questions. And then when I gave birth, I had a planned cesarean due to some complications from my first. And the baby came out and we started breastfeeding right away, and it wasn't a struggle. It happened very naturally. So I don't know if that's why, a lot of people didn't even approach me then. I wasn't still sure that I was doing everything right. So a couple times they did ask to see an LC, and they basically said, oh, well, everyone here is, trained. All of our nurses here are trained to be able to answer your questions. If you really want to see an LC, that's okay, but just know that you can talk to anybody. But it wasn't, I guess I just wanted them to take more of an initiative. And I did give birth at a baby-friendly hospital. But again, maybe they just thought that I had it handled and it was my second and I should know this stuff by now. I mean, it's kind of dangerous to assume, but at the same time, I really wanted people to be more proactive in it.
Absolutely. Denise, do you have any comments you want to mention to these panelists?
It's interesting because you are on the other side of the United States from me, and I'm assuming that's where your panelists live as well. Yet, much of what they said, I experienced or I witnessed in my practice as well. It's pretty universal. And the mamas who are not first-time mamas often do get kind of the raw end of the deal, where healthcare professionals assume that they know everything they need to know, and, oh, this is an easy one. We can check the box off and go to the tough one in the next room. And it's not a lack of caring. It's an assumption, just like she was saying. And, we really shouldn't make assumptions, because even if this mom has a handle on everything, the baby is a different baby. And, that has a big impact, too.
I know whenever I teach prenatal breastfeeding classes and I talk just very briefly about my own experience with my kids, I say the second one, even though I was an experienced breastfeeding mom, he didn't get any of the memos while he was, in utero, because he came out and he was worse than the first. And so that's such a good point, Denise, that every baby is so different, too, that you can't assume that a mom will know how to troubleshoot if the second baby's harder than the first. So, well, ladies, we're going to take a very quick break, but when we come back, we'll be talking with Denise on how a new mom can maximize her breastfeeding ease and not need a lactation consultant after the birth of her child. So we'll be right back. So we're back, and we're here talking with Denise Altman, who is an RN and an IBCLC, an International Board Certified Lactation Consultant from Columbia, South Carolina. So, Denise, our next question for you is, so now the baby's been born, and the mom's taken all the classes that she needs, or maybe she even hasn't, but she's feeling really confident. And so immediately after the birth, what steps are most important for establishing this great breastfeeding relationship between mom and baby?
Okay, well, this is the uh-oh moment. So when mom and her partner look at the nurse who is caring for her right after delivery, and they have the expression on their face that says, now what? It's kind of we're not sure what to do. And I have been that nurse in that position saying, here we go. But that's when you do look to your helpers and whoever is there, the healthcare professional that is there to assist you. That's their job. That is the standard of care. As a nurse or a birth assistant, if it's a home birth center birth, hospital birth, it's all the same. And so ask questions, express where you feel helpless or not sure. But, of course, you see this everywhere. Get that baby feeding right away. When babies are born, generally, unless there are birth complications, they usually have a fairly strong sucking reflex, rooting reflex. They may need a little help getting started, but they know you, mama, best. The amniotic fluid is flavored with your own scent. So even though they haven't been inhaling your scent, they know what you smell like, and that's very comforting to them. They know the sound of your voice. They've been listening to you for 40 weeks, hopefully, or if not less, or more. So they know the sound of your voice, they know the sound of your heartbeat, and they have been held by you all their life. So what babies want and need is to be held some more, especially on exit, because the world is loud, scary, and cold. So putting that baby right skin to skin, letting them nuzzle, lick, explore, stimulate their rooting reflexes, and then getting that first feeding in, that's imprinting. That kind of gets their little brain wiring all set to have a good nursing experience. It gets that colostrum on board for pushing out the rest of the amniotic fluid out of their intestines that they've been swallowing, so they pass those meconium stools. But it also gives them a great little energy drink because they've just done a lot of hard work coming into the world. So just the tiny amounts of colostrum that are transferred between mom and baby
are enough to sustain them for that first 24 hours in those early frequent feedings, and stabilize their blood sugar, that kind of thing. In addition, having that baby skin to skin helps them stabilize their temperature, their heart rate, their breathing, and of course, comforts them. So I'm a huge advocate of that first feeding being right away. Even if mama delivers by C-section, I mean, obviously, whether it's an emergency or not, particularly if it's not an emergency C-section, the baby can nurse right in recovery, and that can be pretty quick, within 35 to 40 minutes after the baby exits. So there may be a short separation that, particularly in the traditional birth settings, if the mom requests that the baby be brought to her in recovery right away, as long as there are no issues with the baby, that's fairly easy to do. Medical staff can do all their assessments while the mama is nursing right there. They can listen to the baby's heart, count the respirations, do everything that they need to do as long as the baby is transitioning well. So there's no real need for the nurse to take the baby away, do stuff, and then bring the baby back. The other thing in those early days is to get help from the staff frequently and often. The segment is about how not to need an LC, but that still doesn't mean you can't ask for the lactation to come and watch a full feeding, particularly if you're having problems, but even if you're not. And the best way to get help from the professionals that are there to take care of you is to ask them to watch a full entire feeding from the time the baby is prepared to feed, either being unwrapped from the blanket or mom is bearing the breast, to the latch on, to the sucking, to the time the baby falls off. The whole entire feeding, not just a piece of the feeding, a couple of minutes while the baby's nursing. Difficulties and issues can happen at any time or even right after feeding, so that's why you ask them to watch the whole thing. And then finally, minimizing separation between mom and baby. A lot of mamas have been told, and I was even one of those nurses that said this, send the baby to the nursery so you can get a full night's sleep. What we now know is that moms actually don't sleep well when the baby is away from them in the nursery. Many of them wake up during the night wondering, is my baby okay? Where is my baby? Is she crying? Is she hungry? Does she need me? And so you actually, as the mama, you may find that your sleep is very fragmented. And I had mothers tell me this when I was a childbirth educator. I used to teach this in my childbirth classes, and mothers came back to me and said, Denise, you've got to quit saying that. We can't sleep when our babies are away from us. And then it just was thrilling to me that it's finally been backed up in the research within the last 5 or 6 years. We know, we've seen moms who've been videoed during the night, as well as other research studies that, they need to be together. And truly, that's how you can avoid delayed feedings and feeding difficulties when the baby is right there.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Denise. Ladies, do you mind kind of talking about what your experience was after your baby was born? And did you ask for lots of help in the hospital? Did you have a visitor policy, for example? What types of things really helped you get breastfeeding off to a start, so that way when you got home you didn't have to pick up the phone immediately like I did and call a lactation consultant? Jessica, do you mind starting off?
Yeah, so I had the baby put right on my chest after she was born. The cord was still attached. After the cord stopped pulsing, they cut it, and I just had her on my chest the whole time. So breastfeeding just happened right away. The only issue was that she sucked so hard that I kind of blistered a little bit. And I consulted the nurses, and they tried to give me the breast shields. But those were just such like a turnoff. I just could not get comfortable with those. So I'm like, I'm not going to use these. I'm just going to deal with the blistering. And it lasted for like one feeding, and then it went away. I think it was just kind of an adjustment. Shocking for my nipples, I guess. But everything was fine. We set up, we didn't have any friends come to the hospital. It was just parents. All of our family was from out of town, so that kind of made it easier. But we were just, kind of honest, and you get in parent mode where it's kind of okay if you're a little more offensive to people. You just got to do what you want and not let, feelings really affect what you think is best. we had a sign on our door that said hypnobirthing. And so, please talk in calm voices, low lighting. So we kind of set the atmosphere right when you saw our door, which I think really helped. It wasn't overwhelming at all for the baby. And everything went really well. It was a really great experience.
Thank you. How about you, Jade?
Well, any chance I got, I visited the baby and was there for most of his feedings. Anytime he fussed, I fed him. I mean, I just felt that that's what he needed.
That's huge.
That's why he was fussing. When we got home, I mean, my family lives in LA, and so they weren't able to just pop over whenever they wanted to, and my husband's parents work, and so we were kind of on our own, and so I was able to feed my son freely throughout the house whenever I wanted to, and that was really helpful, and it hurt. I mean, that was really one of the only issues that I had at the very beginning, was that it really hurt, and I can't be doing it right, if it's hurting this much, but I was doing fine, and it was just me not really paying attention, I guess, in the birthing classes when I should have been taking it all seriously. But yeah, we had a pretty good start, despite my son being in NICU. So yeah, we did really well.
Sunny, what about you? What you had kind of mentioned what your experience was, that you almost wished that you had had a little bit more assistance, but you also were doing fantastic.
I have a good little latcher, and he still is, and I was very thankful for that. I will say, I can't say enough about skin-to-skin contact and what that does, not only for the baby, but for the mother. There's a physical bond there, and especially after you've just given birth, whether it's a natural birth or, in my case with my last son, I had this, I was all bundled up because of my C-section and stuff, and you've been through trauma, whatever it is, and you just need to connect with your child. I mean, there's nothing that I think heals better, than just having that relationship with your child. And so skin-to-skin was huge, not just right after he was born, but, I was able to start breastfeeding, like I said, probably about 30 to 40 minutes after he came out, after a C-section. So, like
That's
Denise
fantastic.
said, in recovery, they brought him to me, and I was just, started then. But I will say, so I was in the hospital for maybe 2.5, 3 days recuperating, and I pretty much went 2.5 to 3 days without wearing a shirt, and I did, and I just kind of got in my head, okay, I'm not going to be modest about this. This is, they've seen a lot better, I'm sure. So I'm not going to feel all weird them coming in and out, because, right after you have a baby, you get a lot of traffic in and out of your room. And so I'm just like, okay, this is fine. I think my husband might have been a little bit more embarrassed about it than me. But that was so important because, I didn't feel like I always had to read my son's cues or whatever when it came to breastfeeding, because if he was awake, I would bring him to breast. If he didn't want to nurse, that's fine. But the opportunity was there for him.
Absolutely. Denise, I do want to mention that just because a mom does need a lactation consultant, this doesn't mean that she is failing at breastfeeding in any sense. And, she may have done everything that we've spoken about during this episode, yet she still needs to see a lactation consultant, not only in the hospital and when she gets home possibly. And so are there certain situations that increase a mother's risk for needing help from a lactation consultant, especially after she's left the hospital?
Yes, there are certain situations that would increase risk. The biggest reason why mothers call me or any mother calls any board-certified lactation consultant is pain. However, I think even more important than that is the mother who's getting so much conflicting opinion. Everybody she encounters tells her something different, and she's not sure who's right and who's not. And the problem is that sometimes there are varying degrees of correct. Breastfeeding is not a black and white experience. It's very much a mother-baby dance. But the mother who's gotten so much conflicting information really needs to seek out somebody knowledgeable that she can build that trust relationship with, and then kind of sort through which of it applies to her and her baby. So that, to me, jumps right up to the head of the list, and then pain is next. It breaks my heart to hear any mother talk about how badly it hurts in the beginning, and when I was listening, I think it was Jade saying, I just must not have paid attention in childbirth class, or I wasn't just doing it right. And every mother does that. We all say, oh, we must be screwing it up. We just don't have a knack for it, or, you know. And that's 9 times out of 10, at least in my experience, that's really not it. It's a lack of good support, a lack of efficient help, and it may not be any of those things. It may be our little baby who's got something going on with herself. Other risks, moms who are on bed rest during pregnancy or have a high risk or complicated pregnancy, more likely to have a complicated birth, which we do know impacts the breastfeeding experience. Multiples included, mothers that have 2 or more babies can breastfeed, but it does require a little bit of management and sometimes juggling. And as a mother of twins myself, I can tell you, yeah, it takes mothers of late preterm, meaning 38 weeks or less, or, of course, preemie babies. Sometimes our late preterm babies, which are between 34 and 38, 34 and 37 weeks, these are our little sneaky little babies. They look good, they breathe well, their weight is good when they're born, but that suck, swallow, breathe coordination, not so much. They're usually real disorganized with their sucking and their feedings, and oftentimes don't wait to feed. More prone to jaundice, weight loss, low body temperature, again, impacting breastfeeding. And it just kind of snowballs. On the mother side of things, mothers with a history of breast surgery, a history of a clinical depression, they're at a greater risk for postpartum depression. So we really need to make sure that things are going well for them to keep their hormones stable. Mothers who had a previous negative breastfeeding experience, they're already starting in their minds with a big strike against themselves. And then finally, mothers who have been given a tool, be it a nipple shield, a syringe, a bottle, anything to help, quote unquote, with feedings. That usually means something's not going well. And oftentimes tools are used inappropriately. So if a mother is given a tool by a nurse or an LC, then she does need some more help. She should ask why she's being given this tool, what the purpose is, and how she will be able to work towards no longer using it in order to decision made, but also she needs to be followed by an IBCLC as well, even after hospital discharge.
Absolutely. Oh, well, thank you so much, Denise. We had so many more questions we wanted to ask, and we'll just have to continue them in another episode, I think. But you really you touched upon, how to not need a lactation consultant, but just offered such great advice. So thank you. And for our Boob Group Club members, our conversation will continue after the end of the show as Denise will answer a few more questions on this topic. For more information about our Boob Group Club, please visit our website at theboobgroup.com. Before we wrap things up today, here's Jonna Rose Feinberg with some tips for breastfeeding multiples.
Hi, Boob Group. This is Jonna Rose Feinberg, editor of breastfeedingtwins.org. I'm a mom of twins and a board-certified lactation consultant in the Seattle area. Today we're going to discuss some tips for getting started with breastfeeding if your journey includes a stop in the neonatal intensive care unit or special care nursery. Many sets of twins are born at term or only a little bit early with no additional medical concerns. But as a group, multiples have an increased risk of complications resulting from high-risk pregnancy or premature delivery. If your babies are born early or face any health challenges, they may spend some extra time in a hospital NICU. No one plans for a NICU stay, but if it turns out your babies need that extra support, here are some tips to support you in your breastfeeding journey. Ask to speak with a lactation consultant. An IBCLC will be able to work with you to establish your milk supply and introduce direct breastfeeding to your babies when they're ready. Initiate pumping with a hospital-grade pump as soon as possible, and continue pumping regularly to establish your milk supply. Bring one of your baby's blankets with you when you're pumping away from the hospital. Sometimes it's hard to relax and let down to a clunky breast pump. Sniffing the smell of your babies can help you relax and also stimulates an oxytocin response in the brain. Cuddle your babies skin to skin as soon as you and they are able. Skin-to-skin care helps stabilize baby's temperature and heart rate and is great for stimulating milk production. It's also a wonderful way to connect with your babies. And remember, dads can do kangaroo care too. One of the most important things you can do for your babies while they are in the NICU is to provide breast milk for them. Breast milk is especially important for fragile preemies, and even small amounts are valuable. For more tips and personal pumping and breastfeeding stories, please visit breastfeedingtwins.org and keep listening to the Boob Group for more twin tips.
Thank you so much to our experts and our panelists and to all of our listeners. If you have any questions about today's show or the topic we discussed, you can call our Boob Group hotline at 619-866-4775 and we'll answer your question on an upcoming episode. If you have a breastfeeding topic you'd like to suggest, we'd love to hear it. Simply visit our website at theboobgroup.com and send us an email through the contact link. Thanks for listening to the Boob Group, because mothers know breast.
This has been a New Mommy Media production. The information and material contained in this episode are presented for educational purposes only. Statements and opinions expressed in this episode are not necessarily those of New Mommy Media and should not be considered facts. While such information and materials are believed to be accurate, it is not intended to replace or substitute for professional medical advice or care, and should not be used for diagnosing or treating healthcare problem or disease or prescribing any medication. If you have questions or concerns regarding your physical or mental health or the health of your baby, please seek assistance from a qualified healthcare provider.
Hey mamas, don't forget to check out Mighty Moms. It's our online community built for new moms just like you. Not only can you connect with other moms, but you can also join us backstage for special mom-only online events. And you'll also be notified when we're recording so you can join us as a special guest. Visit our website, newmommymedia.com, and click on the Mighty Moms banner. It's free. That's newmommymedia.com. See you there.